We keep hearing how fantastic this reform is, and now we learn another seminary closes, another parish closure, another order of nuns is shutting down. What I dislike about this line of discussion is that it ignores the fact that there is a huge bulk of material that you can trace from the 1962 missal all the way back to 1162. And then in many ways, you can trace it even further back to some of the very earliest sources that we have. It is certainly the case that things change about the liturgy, certain manners of performing music, certain styles of vestments, but there is an enormous patrimony of liturgical texts and rites that it does stand in very solid continuity from the very, very beginning until that last printing of the missal was done in 1962. And I think it's a very important point that is the patrimony that the fathers at the Second Vatican Council wanted the ordinary faithful to know and live and love better. They did not want that patrimony to be replaced with new things that would be created by a committee. They wanted us all to embrace all of that as a patrimony which belongs to all of us. So, and that's why I think that the documentary, the phrase Mass of the Ages has become very popular now, thanks to a documentary by a fellow named Cameron O'Hearn, who's done really good work in explaining exactly that. And to say that, there was so much change within the Roman Rite that there is no Mass of the Ages, I think that's just a gross distortion. There is no justification for saying, oh, well, in my particular parish church, in my particular time, they didn't do the music very well. Therefore, Gregorian chant should be made optional, even though Vatican II itself said Gregorian chant is the music of the Roman liturgy. And it's, it seems very, very odd to take a certain set of, times and places and use those as the lens through which we then filter everything. His Holiness Pope Benedict said, in terms of the way things were in Germany when he was a young man, he was born in 1927, he said, if the purpose of the liturgical reform was principally participation on the part of the faithful in Catholic Germany, it was completely unnecessary. Everybody had a missal, everybody followed along all the time. There was this one missal which was produced by a man called Alphonse Schitte that was so well known that a hand missal for the novus ordo in Germany is still called the Schotte Messebuch. Wow. Because it was just like the thing, everybody had one and everybody knew one. So, I don't see why we make an appeal to the specific experience of American parishes in the 50s and 60s rather than, say, to the experience of German parishes in the 20s and 30s, or even say, this is also the rite that inspired the building of Chartres Cathedral and, the music of Palestrina and Josquin des Prés. So it seems to me that that's a very, very selective presentation used to make a sort of ex post facto justification of the liturgical reform. Participation literally means to receive or to take a part in something. So, you're not doing that any less by simply reading the prayers, say other prayers, or meditate on a particular thing. And this is the constant teaching of the Church. The Church has always recognized this. It's only very recently that we've sort of taken it to understand that activity per se is participation. So that, you'll have people making the argument, well, Gregorian chant can't be sung by everybody, so therefore we have to have, much simpler music so that everybody can participate. But that's not participation, that's activity. And a lot of that has led to music, which, yes, it's true, everybody can sing it. But everybody can sing it because it's bad, childish music that isn't worth participating in. That is a distinction which we really need to recover in the Church if we want to have the kind of fruitful and active participation in the liturgy that the Second Vatican Council wanted. All of this ties back to a very unhealthy understanding of the Second Vatican Council, that it's year zero for the church, so that everything that was said before it about what participation really means, well, it's just erased. That doesn't mean anything. Participation is now to be understood wholly and solely as it is, understood by your local liturgy committee, rather than, in the full context of everything that the church had been saying about it up to that point.
Part of the argument goes in this article with George Weigel and his comments is that, well, the liturgy, we touched on this in the last segment. The liturgy was ever changing. It was ever changing. And they really needed to formalize this and get everybody on the same page. Well, if that's true, and that was the goal, Gregory DiPippo, then why do we have a novus ordo with infinite amount of options?
That's the $64,000 question. Not for any good reason that I can see. This is one of the worst problems that we currently face as a church, is that the novus ordo deliberately introduced into Catholic liturgy an incredible license to the priest and the people he chooses as his collaborators, his music director or whatever, to make all kinds of decisions about how we're going to do things that previously were not subject to his decision. This is simply totally alien to the whole experience of Christian liturgy. What that's really done is created a mindset which, if you know anything about human beings, and if you believe in original sin, you would immediately understand that, give them an inch and they'll take 55 miles. So, going outside the bounds of the law, it's become a just sort of de facto thing that priests make all kinds of changes and decisions that they're not licitly allowed to make, but make nonetheless. They've been trained to do that by the mindset. I can't honestly see how this has borne any really good fruit in the church's liturgical life. You cannot use the history of the Roman Catholic liturgy as a whole to justify the liturgical reform that actually took place after the Second Vatican Council, which has not produced any of the fruits that the first paragraph of Sanctum Concilium said wanted to come out of the reform. And this is, another example of the schizophrenia. We keep, hearing how fantastic this reform is, and now we learn another seminary closes, another parish closure, another order of nuns is shutting down. So the Sisters of Charity in New York just decided that they've come to completion and will not be accepting any new novices. And I do see a lot of hopeful signs. There are a lot of people within the church who recognize this schizophrenia is incredibly unhealthy and has to come to an end, and understand that, particularly there is a real need for a reform of the reform, that there are a lot of ways in which the post-conciliar rite needs to be and can be corrected. And at some point, someone will come along and say, yeah, we should definitely start doing that.